Good. Boker Tov, everyone. Very good Erev Shabbat to all. Ramban points out repeatedly that all of the events that the Torah describes to us regarding Avraham Avinu are within the purview of the rule that Maaseh Ovo Simon Labonim. That, so to speak, what happened to Avraham is a precursor, it's a forerunner of events that over history will occur to the Jewish people. And that therefore the response of Avraham is essential in order to have an understanding of the story of the Jewish people. In this week's Parsha, there are a number of such events. The miraculous birth of Yitzchak after Sarah has already passed her childbearing years. So that's the miracle of Jewish survival, where under ordinary circumstances they should not have survived, and we have survived everything. You have the story of the Akedah, the sacrifice of Yitzchak. It teaches us the danger that exists in the world. That we will be called upon, as we are now, to sacrifice our children on behalf of Jewish survival, on behalf of the Lord of Israel. But there's an incident in today's Torah reading that provides difficulty. It's not clear to us what is the moral lesson here. That's the story of Abraham and Sdom. The story begins that heaven, so to speak, is it possible that I should cover over and not tell Avraham Avinu what's going to be here? Avraham is going to be the great founder of the eternal people. So therefore, heaven, so to speak, feels itself obligated to tell Avraham what's going to happen here with Sdom. That's a difficult concept. The Meforshim point out that heaven always gives notice. Things do not happen suddenly. And that a person with wisdom and foresight, so to speak, can anticipate what's coming down the pike. So therefore, Noah builds an ark for 100 years. Because God told him, I'm going to destroy it. And only the ark will survive. So one lesson here very important one is that human beings, as I'll say, who is the true wise man, that he can see what's going to happen. He can anticipate the future. And life gives us many clues as to what's going to happen. We are experiencing now these wars with all the attendant tragedies. So they show us a village in Lebanon. The village in Lebanon, every house is a launching pad for rockets to Israel. But we knew that. We knew that all the time. It's 20 years in the making. So what did we think? The answer is that human beings, even when they are aware of the future, prefer to postpone any action and to ride along with the status quo, so to speak, hoping that it somehow will disappear. But it never does. So that's what the Torah says. Is it possible that Abraham will be the father of a great nation? Should not anticipate what's going to happen? Because if one does not anticipate the future, even though the future is never clear to us, but we have a sense of it. So what do you expect? How can he be a great nation if he doesn't realize what lies ahead of him? And it's true on a personal level, on a family level, on a community level, everywhere, every human society. Without the anticipation of what the future will bring, we do not know how to act properly in the present. Or we pay a great price, because then we have to play catch up. So, the question is raised. Why does heaven feel compelled to let Avraham Avinu know what's going to happen? Yes, is it possible that I should ignore Avraham and not tell him what's going to be with Sdom? So we see from here that the guidance of heaven is always apparent, even when people don't see it. The Lord always tells us in advance what's going to be. Now, we have, for instance, the gift that the Nevi'im granted us, the prophets of Israel. So they give us a long, long view of history. What will be at the end. But the immediate view is always clouded and not known. Nevertheless, heaven indicates to us what's going to happen here. So Avraham Avinu is informed that Sdom and Amorah, Admah, Tzvoim, these four cities are going to be destroyed because of their evil ways. So the Torah here teaches us a lesson, and eventually evil collapses. Takes time, perhaps. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, but eventually all evil collapses. If there is any lesson in history, that's the lesson. How it collapses, when it collapses, we're not told that. But we're told that it definitely will collapse. Definitely will be destroyed. So Sdom, Amorah, Ammon, Tzoim were the wealthiest cities of their time. The land upon which they were situated was then the most fertile. Their prosperity was guaranteed. And in fact, it was their prosperity that led to their collapse. Because when a person is poor and does not have material goods, so he doesn't have security systems, alarms, fences, dogs. Because what, somebody's going to come and steal what? Person that's very wealthy, so he lives in a gated community and protected with guards, with alarm systems. Because he feels that he has something to lose. Eventually, he becomes the prisoner of his own wealth. I knew very substantial people that told me that they could never go away on a vacation because they had to be home to guard the house. So who owns the house? Or the house owns the person? So that's what happens in Stone. How can you have guests? How can you be hospitable? How can you share your wealth? It's anathema to the situation that you have put yourselves in. And therefore, they're corrupted by their own success. Now, nobody prays for failure. But on the other hand, too much success oftentimes ends up in failure. And Sdom and Amorah, Admon, Tzoim, these four great cities are going to collapse. And the Lord tells that to Abraham, so that Abraham will know that all empires will collapse. That all of such society eventually collapse. And they do so in ways that are unimaginable to us. I mean, all of us have lived through the collapse of the Soviet Union. But in the 1970s, the 1980s, who believed that the Soviet Union could collapse? It was the superpower. You're afraid always of what they would do. Collapse, left. It's replaced by others, because that's the nature of human history. But these will also collapse. There's no permanence So that's God says, "Amachasani Avraham," this great secret of understanding human progress. Does Avraham understand it? Does he understand that Sodom and Gomorrah are going to collapse? And the reason for their collapse is not outside forces, but internal corruption and evil. And it's been that way from time immemorial. Except that sometimes it takes a long time. When Chazal spoke about the collapse of the Roman Empire, so that was about the year, beginning in the Mishnah already, about the year that the Roman Empire had 200, 300 years to go yet. But in the eyes of Chazal, it was already collapsed. It already was gone. Even though it would take centuries before it became apparent to all that there's no more a Roman Empire. In our time, the Christian world has collapsed. Nobody, the Pope has become a photo opportunity. How did that happen? Well, there are precautions. You could see it coming, but no one saw it coming. And it's true of all evil. Eventually it collapses. So that's what the Ribono Shel Olam informs Avram. The cries of the oppressed from Sodom and Gomorrah have reached me. And Sodom and Gomorrah cannot continue, cannot survive. So, okay, so that should be the end of the conversation, because that was the end of the conversation with Noah. God told Noah the world is going to be destroyed. Noah said, okay, your world, do what you want with it. But Avram doesn't let go. Avram bargains, so to speak, with God. Maybe there's 50 good people. Now Sodom and Gomorrah had tens of thousands of people. And we are accustomed to the democracy, the majority. The majority rules. So what good is there if there are 50 good people? If there are 10,000 evil people? What does Avram think? So the Torah indicates down here a basic lesson that Sodom was not destroyed because it had 10,000 evil people. It was destroyed because it didn't have 10 good people. That's the power of a good person. It's inestimable. And therefore, the Lord is explaining to Avram, and Avram realizes it, that the Jewish people, who are always so small in number and who are relatively insignificant on the measure of the world's population, that's sufficient to keep the world going. If the Jewish people will be the Jewish people. If we remain a force for goodness. If we don't succumb to being Sodom and Gomorrah. And that is a fundamental lesson of Judaism. The halacha, for instance, 10 men make up a minyan. You have 100, 200, you have 1,000, 2,000. If I a kotel, you have 50,000. Maybe there's a different bracha, but it's not, you didn't in any way increase the minyan. 10 good people is enough. Enough to save. And we see that in the stone itself, that the Lot and his daughters are saved. Why should Lot be saved? If anything, we should say he's worse than they, because I'll say kosher mikulam shana upirish. Somebody, he went to the yeshiva, he knows everything, and then it's nothing. The Chazal say he's at the bottom of the rung. There are those that never learned, those that never were exposed, those that don't know. Okay, it's understandable. You see the 4 sons by Pesach. The Rasha knows, he quotes the pasuk correctly. Help him. Yet Lot is saved. And the daughters are saved. And even though they do a heinous act of incest, that's the basis for the monarchy of the Jewish people. That's where David HaMelech comes from Rus, Moab. So that's the bargaining that Avraham Avinu does with the Ribono Shel Olam. He says, maybe there's a spark of goodness there somewhere. So there's no reason to destroy everybody, because there's going to be something good will come out of it. That's what Chazal meant when they said the power of good is 500 times stronger than the power of evil. So when we see a bad world as we do, violence, greed, repression, hatred, false gods, crazy ideals. So we can become despondent. We can say, what's the use? But in doing so, we underestimate what we are and what we can do. Avraham is one family alone in the world. Why is he called Ivri? He's on one side, the rest of the world is on the other side. But he's the force for good. The force for good eventually always triumphs. something comes out of it. So out of Lot will come Rus, and out of Rus will come David. That's the lesson that Avraham Avinu teaches us. The only thing is, he bargains it down. Maybe 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, 10. You can go lower than 10. There are all sorts of commentaries as to why he didn't go lower than 10. But he thought he had 10. That's what most of the portions say. He thought he had 10. So that would be enough. And in reality, he didn't have the 10. Because Lot's own sons-in-law laughed at him. Tomorrow it's going to be destroyed. What are you, crazy? This is the great stone. You're going to be here forever. They looked at him like he was joking. So that was the miscalculation, so to speak. That he didn't even have the 10. Before she discussed, had he known that, would he have bargained further? On that, there are different opinions. We see from the Mabul that you needed 10. When Mr. Shelach died, so they don't want 10 anymore. So apparently there has to be a critical mass. But it's very small in number. There was a time not long, excuse me, not long ago, the United States Marines used to advertise for enlistments. So they said, a few good men. That's all they're looking for, are a few good men. They prided themselves on being the smallest unit of the American Armed Forces, but they felt that they were the best. And in many respects, they were. So Avram sees that. So Sodom and Amorah are destroyed, and Lot and the daughters are saved. And through them will come an eventual good that no one could have foreseen, because it will take centuries to unfold. We are left a permanent reminder of these lessons. You go to the Dead Sea, you go to that area, salt flats. So you see only desolation. The Torah said that originally it was Gigan Hashem. It was the Garden of Eden. So that's the capacity of human beings. To turn the Garden of Eden into desolation. But it's also within the power of human beings to turn desolation into the Garden of Eden. And that's the choice. And therefore, that's the Maaseh Ovo Simon Labonim. That's the history lesson here in the story of Abraham, which has remained the lot of the Jewish people, no pun intended, the lot of the Jewish people throughout the ages. So we are the few good men and women. That's our job. That's what prevents the world and society from being utterly destroyed. And if we see that that is our mission, and that is what we are here for, so then we're encouraged by the fact that we have survived and remained the special people on the face of God's earth. So have a good Shabbat, everyone. Thank you for coming. Saturday night, we have a lecture. The lecture will be upstairs in splendid comfort. You're all invited.